Social music talk.
And you probably were being groomed to take my job, and not. It certainly wasn't because I wasn't doing a good job. Because
You had good ratings.
My first year, we tripled the ratings. We
Yeah.
went from a 1 share to a 3-2. We went from 18th in the market to 6th, and we had the smallest signal of the top 10 stations. So we did really well. The problem is, and it wasn't a problem, but it was the general manager there had a problem with it, is we were a feeder station for bigger stations. We had people that would work Riverside, San Bernardino, and then K-Rock or someone in LA would come calling, and they would move up to a big market. And that used to make him so angry. Oh, my God, so-and-so is interviewing at KLOS. Well, this is great for them. You know, this is great for them personally. It's going to happen to us. That's the big market. It's right over the hill. We should let it happen. And while I was there making noise, I went on interviews. I interviewed for the Y107 job, which was the other alternative in the 90s that was in Los Angeles.
Yeah,
and
KLYY.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually...
Was Tolkoff there?
That's chapter 3 of the story. Chapter 2.
Okay.
Chapter 1 was the first time I talked, and this directly relates to why they probably brought you on to replace me. I was getting action. I was getting interviews, and I was considering it. I mean, I was like anybody else. Wow, I got a chance to work in L.A. Sure, you know, it was the biggest market next to New York. So the first time I interviewed for Y107 when. I forget the guy's name that left there first, but the guy who got the job, when I didn't get the job, his name was Jim Duncan, and Jim Duncan had programmed KLOS. So I interviewed for the job, and then the general manager called me. He goes, "Look, man, you're great, and you've been doing great stuff out there, but this guy, KLOS, he's got the resume. He's big shot. I got to give him the shot with the station." So I was cool with that. We shook hands. But word got back. I'm not sure how, but I'm pretty sure I have a good idea. So I got sort of called out on that, and... gosh, this is a terrible story. I shouldn't be telling this. Oh, look what you're getting me to say. But anyway, so there was. I'm not going to get into too much of the drama, but there was other times where they assumed I was going to leave. So I know that there were times, and they were trying to, and I was. Yeah. And right at the end
Funny
of the time,
how word gets around in radio real quickly.
Funny how somebody calls the station and says, "I hear your program director's interviewing in Los Angeles." Meatball.
You can never keep a secret in radio.
No, you can't, especially when someone wants your job. So there it was a Max contingent to it. Max took over in 1999.
Okay.
And he called me, and we talked. And we hadn't come to an agreement on anything, but I said, "Oh my gosh, I'd love to come work for you. I'd be your promotions director. I'd take a step down to work for him because, like I said, I respected more than anybody in the business, and I would be his janitor. I would do anything for him because he was that good. I had that much confidence in him. Unfortunately, what happened is not long after that station was announced, a sale was announced, and they went Spanish. But in the meantime...
It's becoming a common story.
Yes. Spanish or religious?
No
I have a
hablo
religious
español.
format. Here's the funny thing. So when this goes down, this is how I got fired from KCXX. Word got back that I had talked, and I had not said I was leaving. I just talked to Max, but I think they knew how I felt about Max. They knew who he was. They knew he was my mentor. They probably just assumed. So the last time that had happened, they called me and they gave me a 2-year contract. They didn't want me to leave. Great. This time, they probably would have done the same thing, but right after I talked to them was when they announced that the format was going away. So they announced that on Friday, and the following Monday, they fired me. And the general manager, who I shall remain nameless, said, "Where are you going to go now?" Literally said that to me.
He said that as a jerk?
He literally said that because he knew I had nowhere to go, and because they wanted to get rid of me because they knew I was interviewing elsewhere. So you know what happened? It was. I don't have any regrets about it because it is what it is. Yeah. But then I went to work for Y107 for the last 2 months. It was on the air.
Okay.
For Max.
And it was alternative, right?
Yes, it was alternative, straight up. And Halloran was there at the time.
Okay.
I think he was the music director there. But right after, I called him up and I said, "Hey, they fired me." And he goes, "Well, I need people right now. They're firing all the full timers." I think they had told Halloran he had to leave. Like they were blowing everybody out. So they were just having part-timers run the station for the next 2 or 3 months until they flipped to Spanish. I worked 4 or 5 shifts a week at least. I was there all the time, and it was great. So it nice little transition out of PD into at least doing
Did
something
you
on the air.
move to LA or did you commute?
No, I commuted.
Okay.
Yeah. I still had my apartment in San Bernardino.
Okay.
So I commuted from there most of the time. And then when I was actually on the air the last day that they were an alternative and they were playing Feliz Navidad every hour.
I love that
And then it was
song.
every other song. And then at 4 o'clock, it was just that one song over and over until they flipped to Spanish.
Was it Christmas time?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was right at the end of the year, right at the end of December. And they were the people that took over were super nice to me. They actually said, "We'll send we would like you to do production work with us. We'll send you to class to help you learn Spanish." So I thought that was really nice of them
dos, tres,
to
cuatro.
even offer. I mean, there's no way I was going to do it, but I mean, I thought it was very, very nice of the new owners to offer that to me, which of course I didn't do. So then I moved on from there.
To where?
From there, I stayed in LA and took another job, which is this is the wackiest job I ever had. I took a job as the marketing director for a guy named Saul Levine.
Oh, yeah.
Still in the business.
Okay.
He had K Mozart and K Jazz, which was the K Jazz was an AM station that was true jazz. It wasn't like Sade and jazz. It was Coltrane and Miles Davis. It was like the real old soul jazz, really, really good stuff. That was the AM station that had just launched, and he brought me on. And then the FM was K Mozart. It was classical.
Wow.
Like actually classical music.
Did it get any numbers?
It did. The thing about that is, in LA, you can fart out the window and make money. The market is so big that it's literally just crazy how much money
One
is
share there is equivalent to a 4 share somewhere else in a
or
medium.
more,
Yeah,
or more,
okay.
because the money is just incredible. It's like when I had a friend that worked at Y107 that was in sales before I got there, and he said they would make 6 figures every month off of people who couldn't get on K-Rock because it was sold out. $100,000 a month in income for people going, well, I can't get on K-Rock. Can I buy you guys?
Wow.
So that's how much money is in LA. I mean, maybe not so much anymore, but it was just crazy. So this classical station, which had like a 2 share, it was with 2 shares like a middle of the pack station, guys.
Yeah.
So it had this, but the research on it was off the charts. The average age was 50. The average income was $175,000 a year. So it was all these rich people. So I did the promotions and marketing for almost a year, and we would in order to give away something, we would give away a 10-day trip to Israel that would be worth $20,000. They had to pay us $10,000 for the privilege of giving away their $20,000.
Really?
That's how big time this was in LA. As far as I mean, they had fantastically rich people who traveled, so stuff like that. So it was great to do. Although the owner himself was a completely different thing. When I was there, he basically the classical station was, I was just doing promotions, putting stuff on the air. It's pretty easy. The AM station was one I had to really massage. I had to really work the marketing programs, get events, stuff like that. I negotiated to get the Santa Monica Pier Summer Concert Series, which only had 2 or 3 jazz shows, but I got the whole series, so we sponsored it all. So when who's the guitarist for the Doors?
Densmore?
Robbie Krieger.
Krieger. Yeah, you're right.
Krieger.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. When he played, we presented that show, even though we were the jazz station, stuff like that. So it was cool stuff that I was doing. So I was working harder on that. But when I got there, they didn't even have a station van. This is Los Angeles. Didn't have a station van. So I went to the owner. I said, we got to have a couple of vans here for the station. He goes, well, I'll buy one van, and you just put K Mozart on one side, the logo, and you put K Jazz on the other, and just park it the way that you're doing for this. And I did that. I literally had a van with one logo on one side and one logo on the other. We had to face out whatever.
That's hilarious.
show we were doing.
That is hilarious. I've never heard of that before.
That was, and it was in Los Angeles of all places. So that only lasted about a year. I was only there because, and I should say, I had a nice time there, and the people were super nice. And I've been very fortunate that most of my exits were people were very nice to me. I mean, basically, they fired me, but they sold the jazz station, and they came in and they said, look, the reason we hired you was to jack this thing up so we can make all this money. And they sold this AM jazz station for like $20 million, which today would be worth like 3.
Yeah.
So
Why was it? Was it just because it was in L.A.?
Yeah, LA, yeah.
Okay.
It was a big LA signal, yeah.
Okay.
For a while, and remember, this is 2000, the year 2000. So the dive in values of radio had not happened yet.
Right. That was more mid 2000s.
It was, the buying was still going on.
Yeah.
The big companies
Merger
were
mania.
overpaying for all of these stations.
Yeah.
Was still going
Let's
on.
buy a station for $50 million. Whoops! Now it's worth $3 million.
Well, the what I learned about this, being involved in some purchases of radio station, is that it's like real estate, but the real estate is like what they call multiples. So the pricing on radio is based on the multiple years of gross billing is what you buy it for. So that's how the market would be measured. Like if it was really hot, it would be 20 times annual billing, 20 that kind of thing. And
of
if it
the
was bad,
past, but not the projection
or projections. Either way.
Okay.
So, but what most of the time it was past. So what was happening when all these stations were being bought up is they were being bought up on high multiples of 10 or 15 or whatever. Now a station is bought on 1.5. But back then it was crazy. So all these buying that was going on, like, this Saul Levine was like, of course he was going to take $20 million for a station that he had purchased in the 60s for about $50,000.
Yeah.
So he did really well.
Yeah. Now, speaking of all this money talk, just real briefly, because I'd rather get back to the music part, but you work for iHeart. At one point, they were $20 billion in debt, but they've paid it down by selling off assets, I guess, and now it's only $5 billion.
Yeah, I think and I'm going to say that I'm unqualified to say this before I say it because those of us that work for the company don't work in a position to really know what's going on. But from what I heard, that some of the venture capitalists now have more of an equity position in the company.
Okay,
so it's more of that.
Radio's a different ballgame these days.
But please, let's not spend the rest of this time bagging on my employer.
I know. But do you like working there?
Here's the thing I will say, and corporate radio does have its issues, but I have to say a little bit of positivity about the company that I work for, because it's true. And this is sort of a new thing, that the reasoning is not what's important. It's not how we got to this point, but the program is important, and I think is something really positive for people in radio. What iHeart has adopted over the last few years is a real serious focus on endorsements and influencers. Now, what that means is they've realized that it's a heck of a lot more important to have the guy who's locally on the air to say, hey, man, the guys at ASAP Plumbing fixed the leak in my house and they're great, is going to do more business for ASAP than some generic voice saying, ASAP is the greatest plumber in the world. So they've really realized that, and they've really made it a priority. Now, it's all for the bottom line, and that's good for them. But what's good, the good payoff on that is for those of us that have stayed in radio for some silly reason, are now getting an opportunity to be influencers and to make more money.
Okay.
And it's helping the client. It's helping
new revenue streams.
It is. And certainly, it's there to make the company more money. And I don't begrudge iHeart for wanting to make money. But because they've decided this little avenue is there, there's a lot of us that are on the air now that now have a way to supplement our income that we didn't have before. Before, it was the remote. You had to go up here somewhere and you make a couple $100 for hanging out. Well, now you have ongoing 13-week campaigns where you're getting regular checks. And it's really good for us as on-air people. And it's really good for iHeart because they're seeing better returns from their clients.
Okay.
So
radio still works, is what you're saying.
So bottom line is radio still does work when it's local.
Okay.
That's I would, and I think that iHeart to some extent understands that, and they exploit it, which is great. That's the good thing that I will say about them. My experience is that this new program is a really good program for those of us that stuck around, and I can't complain about that. It's done really well for me, and we work directly with the clients. We talk to them. We have a relationship with them. The commerce part of it is just the commercials instead of a generic voice saying, this is a great business. It's me or whoever the person on the air saying, I used this business and I had a really good experience.
Testimonials.
And there is no pressure ever from management at iHeart for you to do a testimonial of something you don't believe in. They will not. They're absolutely cool about that. I know this is ruining your image of iHeart. You're thinking, oh my God, how can those guys be nice? But I'm
not against them. No.
I'm against the concept of corporate radio. But if it's going to be there and you can work within the system, and then there are areas that have worked out pretty well for us where we can actually work with our advertisers and help them, and it's great. It's good for us personally, and it makes us feel a little bit more connected to the advertisers rather than being those guys that have all the commercials that we have to run. So I think it's a really positive thing.
One more question about commercials, then we'll be done with that topic, because I never listen to radio for commercials. And you know what? In production, I never wanted to be in the production room to make commercials. I purposely sounded boring when it came to that so that they wouldn't stick them on me. But isn't that where the money's made now, making commercials?
Well, yeah. I mean, the money in making commercials and the money in endorsing. I mean, that's really your direct connection with the client, and it's the way radio should have been in the old days, and we should have done more of that in the old days, and we didn't do that, and that was to radio's.
I think it was different rules back then.
Well,
before the Telecom Act,
possibly it was different rules, but you could still say, I used this business and it was really good.
Yeah.
You could still do that.